Isabel adjusted an old napkin on the coffee table and set down 2 steaming cups of herbal tea. The evening air was filled with the scent of thyme and mint, creating a cozy atmosphere in their small living room. Mateo sat nearby, leaning over his laptop, his fingers sliding quickly across the keyboard, opening new pages with pictures of houses. "Look, this neighborhood here is perfect for us." Mateo turned the screen around so Isabel could see the image better. "It's quiet. There's a good school nearby and a park 3 blocks away." Isabel leaned closer, looking at the pictures of neat 2-story houses with small gardens. Her heart fluttered with excitement. After 10 years of waiting, their dream was finally becoming a reality. She remembered how they had started to save money, a little at first, denying themselves small pleasures, then more and more. "And here you could make a winter garden," she pointed to the glassed-in veranda of one of the houses. "Can you imagine how many orchids would fit in there?" Mateo smiled, looking at his wife's enthusiastic face. Her brown eyes sparkled as she began to talk about flowers. Isabel sipped her hot tea cautiously as she continued to look at the pictures. A tattered notebook lay on the table, where she diligently wrote down the addresses of her favorite choices. "You know, I think we should look at the house on Avenida Arequipa." Mateo opened a new tab. "It's a little more expensive than we had planned, but the location is perfect." Isabel frowned, looking at the price. It was indeed a lovely house, bright, spacious, with a small patio that would be perfect for a barbecue. But the amount, she mentally counted their savings. "Mateo, that's 15,000 more than we've raised," she shook her head. "Let's be realistic." "But think about it." A persistent note appeared in her husband's voice. "The neighborhood's developing. Prices will skyrocket there in a couple years. It's a great investment." Isabel ran her finger along the rim of the cup, gathering her thoughts. Outside the window, dusk was slowly fading, and the orange light from the street lamps was beginning to filter through the thin curtains. "We've been saving this money for so many years," she said quietly. "Every salt set aside, counted every little thing. Remember when we gave up that trip to the coast 3 years ago?" Mateo set the laptop on the table and pulled his wife to him. He smelled of cologne and a little of construction dust that had gotten into his clothes from a day's work. Isabel pressed herself against his shoulder, breathing in the familiar scent. "Of course I remember, and I remember how you cried when your car broke down and we decided not to spend our savings on repairs." Isabel smiled, remembering the old VW that had to be sold for parts. Now she took the bus to work, but it was worth it. Every soul they saved brought them closer to their dream of owning their own home. Mateo reached for his laptop again, opening new ads. Pictures flashed across the screen: spacious living rooms, cozy bedrooms, modern kitchens. Isabel imagined what their lives might look like in each of these homes. "Here, check out this option," she pointed to one of the houses. "In our budget, close to my store, and the backyard is big enough." Mateo nodded, saving the link to his bookmarks. Isabel got up to refill her tea and accidentally elbowed the stack of interior design magazines they'd bought over the past weeks. The magazines rustled quietly on the floor, opening up on the pages with folded corners where they'd labeled their favorite ideas. As she gathered the magazines, images of their future home flashed through her mind. A bright kitchen with a large window, where freshly brewed coffee would smell in the morning. A cozy bedroom with a soft rug and thick curtains. A living room where they could gather with friends on weekends. And of course, the winter garden, her little kingdom filled with orchids, ficus, and other plants. "What are you thinking about?" Mateo's voice snapped her out of her musings. "You have such a dreamy look on your face." "Imagining decorating our future home with flowers." She sat back down on the couch. "There are some rare varieties at the store that I'm specifically saving for our home." Mateo stroked her hand affectionately. In their 10 years together, he had grown accustomed to his wife's characteristic of turning any space into a blooming garden. Their small apartment was littered with potted plants, and even the tiny balcony managed to grow some climbing flowers. Speaking of the store, Isabel glanced at her watch. I have to get up early tomorrow to get the bouquets ready for the Morales wedding. Yeah, and I have to be at the construction site by 8, Mateo stretched, closing his laptop. Tomorrow's a big day. The committee is coming to accept the second floor. They began to get ready for bed, moving habitually around the apartment, already knowing all its nooks and crannies by heart. Isabel checked the locks, watered the flowers on the windowsill, and stacked the magazines neatly. Mateo was laying out her things for tomorrow and checking her alarm clock. As she fell asleep, she smiled, imagining how soon they would be falling asleep in their new bedroom, in their own home. Not in that luxurious mansion on Avenida Arequipa, but in a more modest version, but completely theirs. The morning at Isabel's flower store began long before the first customers arrived. She opened the heavy metal door at 6 a.m. sharp, letting in the cool morning air. The room was filled with the smell of fresh herbs and the delicate fragrance of roses brought in the night before. The first order of business was the bouquets for the Morales wedding. The order was large and responsible, 40 small arrangements for the tables and 5 large ones to decorate the hall. Isabel pulled an armful of snow-white calla lilies from the refrigerator, arranged cream roses and sprigs of gypsophila on her desk. "Good morning, neighbor," came a ringing voice from the door. "Laboring with the first rooster as usual?" Carmen stood in the doorway, holding a paper bag that emitted the delightful aroma of freshly baked goods. Her small bakery was across the street, and every morning began with this ritual of sharing the news over a cup of coffee and hot scones. "Come in soon," Isabel smiled, wiping her hands on her apron. "I was just about to take a break." Carmen set the bag on the small table in the corner of the store where they usually had their morning sit-downs. Isabel pulled 2 cups and a thermos of coffee she'd made at home from the back room. "You look especially radiant today," Carmen remarked as she spread the still warm cinnamon rolls on napkins. "Did something good happen?" "Mateo and I looked at houses last night." Isabel poured coffee into cups. "You know, I think we're finally close to buying our own." Carmen's eyes widened with surprise and joy. "Really? You finally saved up the right amount of money?" "Yes, can you believe it? 10 years of saving every soul, and now we can choose. There are some great options in the San Isidro neighborhood." Carmen took a bite of her bun, looking at her friend intently. "And which house did you like best?" Isabel began to talk about the options she had seen, pausing now and then to spray water on delicate orchids or to correct a composition in the window. Her movements were light and enthusiastic, her eyes glittering with joyful anticipation. "And in the yard, I'll make a real garden," she said dreamily, gently wiping the leaves of a ficus. "I've already picked out some ivy for a hedge, and I know where to get some rare roses." "You know, I'm so happy for you and Mateo," Carmen said, gently spreading the rose petals. "You've always been such a determined couple. Others would have taken out loans and gotten into debt a long time ago, and you're doing everything right." Isabel smiled, securing another bouquet in a special stand. "We just know what we want. Mateo says a house isn't just walls, it's a foundation for the future. We want everything to be honestly earned." The day was gaining momentum. Every now and then customers came into the store. Someone was looking for potted plants for the office. Someone was choosing a bouquet for a date. A young mother and her daughter were taking a long look at cacti. Isabel had time for everything: counseling customers, finishing a wedding order, watering plants, and taking delivery of a new batch of flowers. By lunchtime, the heat had become almost unbearable. Isabel turned on the fan, directing the airflow to the particularly delicate flowers. Carmen stopped by again, this time with cold lemonade and fresh sandwiches. "You have to eat," she said sternly, seeing that her friend was fully immersed in her work. The Morales' wedding won't be canceled if you take a lunch break. They settled in the shade by the window, watching the passers-by on the street. Isabel talked about the plans for the future house, and Carmen listened attentively, sometimes inserting useful advice on the organization of space. The experience of managing a bakery had taught her to use every square meter wisely. "Aren't you afraid to leave the neighborhood?" Carmen asked. "After all, you have regular customers here, an established business." Isabel looked thoughtfully at her store. "A little scared, sure, but we're looking at houses not too far from here. I'll be able to get to work, I'll just have to get up a little earlier." The sun was slowly slipping towards dusk, coloring the store windows in warm orange tones. Isabel was counting the day's sales when the phone rang. It was Mateo. He said he would be late for work because of the commission's arrival. "Don't expect me for dinner, honey." His voice sounded a little tired. "Gotta finish all the paperwork today." "Okay," she replied. "Then I'll stay late too, finishing up the bouquets for the wedding." Finished talking, Isabel went back to work. The empty store was silent, with only the rustling of plant leaves under the fan and the occasional passing car outside the window. She methodically assembled bouquet after bouquet, checking each one for compliance with the sketch that the bride had approved. At dusk, having locked up the store and checked the alarm, Isabel walked slowly to the bus stop. In her hands she carried a small bouquet of leftover flowers, a simple arrangement of alstroemerias and greenery that she had put together for her and Mateo's apartment. Tomorrow she would put it in their favorite vase, and the flowers would be a delight to the eye, a reminder that they would soon have a home of their own, where there would be much more room for flowers. The sound of an incoming message cut through the silence of the Sunday morning. Isabel reached for the bedside table where Mateo's cell phone lay, which he had forgotten in his haste to leave for the construction site, despite the day off. A notification from an unfamiliar number popped up on the screen. Isabel wasn't going to read someone else's message, but her eyes caught the text in the preview. "Honey, thank you for a wonderful evening. Your kisses still burn my lips." Isabel straightened abruptly on the bed, her heart thudding in her chest. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked her phone. Mateo had never said a password. They had nothing to hide from each other. There was a photo in the message. A young woman with long dark hair smiling at the camera. Beautiful, well-groomed, 30 years old at most. Isabel slowly lowered the phone to her lap. The room was suddenly stuffy, though the window was open and the morning breeze rippled the curtains. There must be some mistake. There had to be a simple explanation. Mateo couldn't. They'd just yesterday been discussing future plans, choosing colors for the walls in their future home. He talked about a nursery, about how nice it would be to finally have a baby when they moved in. She made breakfast like a blur. Cracked eggs for scrambled eggs, sliced tomatoes, put on toast. The smell of burnt bread brought her back to reality. She never allowed herself to be distracted while cooking. Throwing away the blackened toast, Isabel sat down at the table with a cup of strong coffee. Mateo's phone lay nearby, the screen occasionally lit up with new notifications. Isabel tried not to look at it, but her gaze kept returning to the cell phone. Should she look at the other messages? No, she had no right. It would be a betrayal of trust. But wouldn't it be more of a betrayal to... The sound of a key turning in the lock interrupted her musings. Mateo entered, whistling some kind of tune. He smelled of fresh air and a little gasoline, apparently filling up the car on the way. "Good morning, sweetheart." He leaned over to kiss her cheek. "I'm sorry I rushed out so early. I had to check on a new shipment of supplies." Isabel pulled away, holding out her cell phone to him. "You've been getting messages." Mateo took the cell phone, casting a quick glance at the screen. His face froze for a moment, but he quickly managed himself. It's just a stupid joke from the guys at work." "A joke?" Isabel tried her best to remain calm. Are you saying that your co-workers have fun sending messages like that? Mateo strode into the kitchen, poured himself a cup of coffee. His movements were normal, casual, but Isabel noticed the way his hand trembled as he set the cup on the table. You see, we have this tradition, he spoke evenly, looking into the cup. We play pranks on each other from time to time. Last month, here was Ricardo getting love letters supposedly from the boss's wife. Everyone had a lot of fun at the time. Is the photo part of the prank too? Her voice sounded quiet but firm. Who is this girl, Mateo? I have no idea, he shrugged. Probably downloaded some photo from the internet. You know how easy it is to find any image nowadays. Isabel got up from the table, walked over to the window. It was sunny outside. The neighborhood kids were playing in the yard, their laughter coming even through the closed windows. An ordinary Sunday morning, just like hundreds of others in their lives. Why did everything seem different now? Unfamiliar, alien. You never told me about these shenanigans, she said, without turning around. In all these years, you've never once mentioned such traditions in your collective. I just didn't want to bother you. Mateo stood up and walked over to her, putting his hands on her shoulders. It's silly male entertainment, nothing serious. I'd like to meet your co-workers, she said after a pause, since you have such a close, friendly relationship. Mateo froze for a moment, his fingers gripping her shoulders a little tighter. Why? It's all men. You won't be interested. You'll only waste your time. And yet, Isabel turned to face him. Why don't we have a barbecue next weekend? Invite your co-workers and their families. Honey, now is not a good time. Mateo stepped back to the table, taking his cup. We have an important project. Everyone is very busy. Maybe later. Isabel watched him wash his cup, wipe his hands thoroughly with a kitchen towel, correct the magnet on the refrigerator. Ordinary, everyday actions that suddenly seemed contrived, unnatural. I'm going to take a shower, Mateo said, and then we can go see that house in San Isidro, remember? The one with the big garden. Isabel nodded, continuing to stand by the window. Mateo came out of the kitchen, and a moment later, the sound of water was heard. She slowly lowered herself into a chair, feeling a cold emptiness growing inside. She remembered their conversations about home, about the future, about children. She remembered how they had dreamed, planned, saved money. Mateo came out of the bathroom, refreshed, wearing a clean shirt. He smelled of his favorite perfume, the same perfume Isabel had given him last Christmas. I'm ready to go if you haven't changed your mind, he said, checking the car keys in his pocket. The realtor said she'd be expecting us at 11. Isabel glanced at her watch. It was the beginning of 10. Half an hour to pack, then the drive. Ordinary Sunday morning, ordinary plans. Only inside everything clenched with a premonition of something inevitable, terrible. Yes, of course, she replied. Give me 10 minutes, I'll change. In the bedroom, selecting clothes, Isabel caught her reflection in the mirror. Outwardly, she looked the same as usual, but there was a new expression in her eyes, wariness, distrust. I'm ready, she said, stepping out into the hallway where Mateo was already waiting with the car keys. Let's go see our future home. Those words, which had filled her heart with joy just yesterday, sounded fake today, insincere. But she smiled, took her bag and left the apartment after her husband, already knowing that this day would change their lives forever. The bell above the bakery door jingled as Isabel stepped inside. The aroma of fresh baked goods enveloped her, but even that cozy smell couldn't take away the anxiety that had settled in her soul after Sunday's incident. Carmen stood behind the counter, arranging fresh croissants in the display case. You're early today, she smiled at her friend, but immediately frowned when she noticed her pale face. What's wrong? Isabel silently walked behind the counter, the privilege of her best friend, and lowered herself onto the small stool Carmen kept especially for long conversations with her. Her hands trembled, and she interlocked her fingers. "Can you make me some coffee?" Her voice sounded hoarse. "Double espresso, please." Carmen quickly dealt with the first customer's order and hung a "break 15 minutes" sign on the door. She pulled blueberry cream cakes, Isabel's favorite, from under the counter and set a cup of steaming coffee in front of her friend. "Tell me about it." Carmen took a seat next to her, putting a hand on her friend's shoulder. "Something with the house. It wasn't a good fit." Isabel took a sip of hot coffee, burning her lips. The physical pain sobered her a little, helped her gather her thoughts. "On Sunday morning I found a message on Mateo's phone," she began, looking into her cup. "A love message, with a picture of a woman." Carmen froze before she could get the brownie to her mouth. What exactly was the message? Isabel recounted the text, every word of it etched into her memory. She described the photograph, Mateo's reaction, his explanations about his co-workers' pranks. Carmen listened in silence, only shaking her head. "And you believe that nonsense about pranks?" she asked when Isabel finished her story. "I've never heard of it in 10 years, and all of a sudden it's such a tradition. I don't know what to believe." Isabel ran her finger along the rim of the cup. "I mean, we've been together since we were 15. I've known him my whole conscious life. He can't." "He can," Carmen interrupted her stiffly. "Men can, especially when they suddenly have money and position." Isabel shuddered. Indeed, their lives had changed over the past year. Mateo had been promoted to brigade chief. He had new acquaintances, business meetings, important clients. "He says it's a joke," Isabel said quietly. "That the guys took her picture on purpose for a prank." "And did you check the other messages on his phone?" Carmen began wiping down the already clean counter, something she always did when she was nervous. "Call history? Social media?" "No," Isabel shook her head. "I can't. It would be a betrayal." "Betrayal?" Carmen snorted. "And what he's doing isn't a betrayal." A customer walked into the bakery and Carmen was distracted by her work. "You know what's weird?" she said when Carmen returned. "We went to look at a house on Sunday, and Mateo was kind of distracted. Didn't ask the realtor any questions, barely discussed the layout, and he used to always go into every detail." Carmen sat down next to her, tapping her fingers thoughtfully on the countertop. "What about your savings? Are they still there?" The question made Isabel go cold. She hadn't checked their shared stash in weeks. There was no need. They were saving for a house and had agreed not to touch the money. "Do you think it's worth checking?" she asked in a shaky voice. "No, Mateo couldn't. It's our shared dream." "Check," Carmen said firmly. "Tonight, as soon as you get home. And if there's nothing wrong, I'll be the first to apologize for my suspicions." Customers began to enter the bakery again. Isabel finished her cooled coffee and stood up. She had to open the store, too. Carmen hugged her goodbye. "Don't get discouraged," she whispered. "You're strong, and I'm always here for you." The day at the flower store dragged on interminably. Isabel mechanically made bouquets, counseled customers, watered plants. She thought back over the last few months. Had there been any signs? Mateo had indeed begun to stay late at work more often. Mateo wasn't home yet, late at work again. Isabel walked slowly through the apartment, turning on the lights in each room. She stopped at the closet where they kept the money. Her hand froze on the doorknob. "This is stupid," she said to herself. "Mateo couldn't have taken the money without my knowledge. It's our shared dream, our future." But Carmen's words kept her mind at rest. Isabel opened the closet, pushed aside a stack of old magazines, and pulled out a tin cookie box, the kind they sold at the store across the street from their first apartment. They'd bought that box the day they'd decided to start saving for a house of their own. The box was empty. Isabel slowly sank to the floor, still holding the useless tin. Her ears were ringing, black dots floating in front of her eyes. Where was the money? Why had it disappeared? Mateo he just couldn't do that to their shared dream. The front lock clicked. The husband returned. Isabel remained sitting on the floor, staring at the empty box. She would ask him now, and he would be sure to explain. There must be some simple explanation. There must be... "Honey, I'm home." Mateo's voice came from the hallway. "You wouldn't believe what a crazy day it's been today." His voice trailed off as he entered the room and saw his wife sitting on the floor with an empty box in her hands. In the silence that followed, the only thing heard was the ticking of the clock, the same wedding clock counting down the seconds of their married life, which had suddenly been built on lies. The sun was beating down mercilessly, but Isabel did not hurry to take shelter in the cool interior of the store. She stood at the window, mechanically wiping the already clean glass, glancing outside. It had been a week since the evening she had discovered the money missing. Mateo's explanation had been simple. He'd invested their combined savings in a promising restaurant business. "It's a great opportunity," he said, pacing around the room. "We'll have twice as much in 6 months. We'll be able to buy a house much better than the one we dreamed of." Isabel swiped the rag across the glass with such force that the window creaked pitifully. How could he? How could he dispose of their shared money without her consent? 10 years of shared plans, hopes, dreams, and it all came crashing down in an instant. The bell above the door jingled as an elderly lady, a regular customer, entered the store. Isabel put on her usual professional smile. "Good morning, Señora Mendoza." The usual, a bouquet of carnations. Señora Mendoza was saying something about her grandchildren. Isabel nodded in the right places, but hardly listened. She noticed movement on the opposite side of the street. Her husband's familiar figure appeared from around the corner. Her heart sank. The same woman from the photograph was walking beside him. "Excuse me, Señora Mendoza." Isabel hurriedly wrapped the bouquet. "I need to check on a delivery in the back room right away." She escorted her customer out and, after waiting for her to move farther away, slipped out of the store. Mateo and his companion headed toward a small cafe at the end of the street. The woman was talking animatedly, touching his arm, and he was smiling, that special smile that Isabel thought was meant only for her. Isabel moved at a safe distance, hiding behind parked cars and the lush crowns of ornamental trees. Her summer dress clung to her back. Her shoes, completely unsuitable for tracking, chafed her feet, but she walked stubbornly forward. The couple stopped at the entrance to the El Paso Café, a small establishment with a pretension to European style. Isabel often passed by, but never went inside. Mateo gallantly opened the door in front of his companion, letting her pass through. His hand touched her waist for a moment, such a natural, intimate gesture. Isabel froze around the corner of a neighboring building. Through the cafe's large windows, she could see them settled at a table at the back of the room. The waiter brought menus and they talked animatedly, the woman laughing, her head tilted back. The phone in her bag vibrated. Carmen was calling. Isabel answered it mechanically, not taking her eyes off the cafe window. "Where are you?" Her friend's voice sounded worried. "I went to the store and it's closed in the middle of the day." "Yeah." Isabel swallowed the lump in her throat. "I'm on San Martin Street, outside the El Paso Café." "What are you doing there?" A wary note appeared in Carmen's voice. "Isabel, what's wrong?" "Mateo's here," she whispered, "with that woman in the picture. They're sitting in the cafe, laughing." "Don't move," Carmen said firmly. "I'll be right there. Just don't do anything stupid." But Isabel wasn't listening anymore. Mateo leaned across the table, whispering something in his companion's ear. She smiled, her hand resting on his palm. They looked like a couple in love, quite naturally, as if they had always been. So this was where their savings had gone, to this woman's restaurant. All their dreams, their plans, their hopes, all turned into an investment in their mistress's business. Isabel. Carmen appeared as if out of nowhere, grabbing her hands. Look, Isabel nodded toward the window. There she is, the client they're supposedly doing business with. Carmen looked out from around the corner, her face darkening. Let's get out of here. You don't need to see this. No, Isabel shook her head. I need to know the truth. I have to understand where our money went. At that moment, the couple in the cafe began to gather. Mateo paid, helping his companion up. They walked outside, still engrossed in conversation. Isabel instinctively retreated deeper into the shadows, feeling Carmen's fingers gripping her hand tighter. So I'll meet you at the notary's office tomorrow? The woman's voice reached them. We need to finally get the paperwork done. Of course, Rosario, Mateo replied. I'll bring all the necessary papers. Rosario. Now the mysterious stranger had a name. She kissed Mateo on the cheek, lightly, habitually, and got into a car parked nearby. Mateo gave the car a glance, pulled out his cell phone. A few seconds later, Isabel's phone vibrated. Going to be late tonight. Important meeting with suppliers. Don't wait up with dinner. Isabel looked at the screen, then at her husband, who was already striding in the opposite direction of the construction site. Lies piled on lies, turning their lives into a house of cards ready to collapse at the slightest whiff of wind. Come to my place, Carmen said quietly. Have some tea, calm down. You can't go back to the store like this. The bakery was empty. Lunch hour was long gone. Carmen locked the door, hung up the closed sign, and led her friend into the small restroom. Isabel sank down on an old couch, staring unseeingly in front of her. That's where our money went, she pronounced after a long silence. To the restaurant of this, Rosario's. All our savings, all our dreams of a house. Carmen silently brewed the tea, added 3 spoonfuls of sugar to Isabel's cup. She always did that in stressful situations. The clinking of the spoon against the porcelain echoed in her ears, reminding her of the morning she and Mateo drank coffee, discussing plans for the future. What are you going to do? Carmen finally asked, taking a seat next to her. We need to talk to him, demand an explanation. Isabel shook her head. He'll still lie. He'll say it was a business meeting, that I misunderstood. I mean, he didn't even admit it when I found the empty money box. Then we need to do something else. Carmen set the cup on the table. Find out everything about this restaurant, about this woman. Find out what documents they're going to sign at the notary. There was a knock at the bakery, some belated customer trying to get in. Carmen brushed it off, ignoring the knock. It was more important to support her friend now, to keep her from breaking under the weight of betrayal. I have to get back to the store. Isabel stood up, straightening the folds on her dress. I have 3 orders for today. I can't let my customers down. Are you sure? Carmen looked at her friend worriedly. Maybe we should take the day off. No, Isabel replied firmly. Work will keep me from going crazy. Besides, she grinned bitterly, I need to earn even more now that all our savings have gone into someone else's business. Back at the store, the first thing Isabel did was check her phone. Mateo had sent another message. Might have to go to a site in the suburbs. I'll be back late, don't worry. Her fingers hovered over the screen. What to reply? Write, okay, good luck, as usual. Pretend nothing had changed, or finally say what was on her mind. A courier came into the store with a new shipment of flowers. Isabel put her phone away. Work demanded attention. She began to sort through the boxes of roses, checking the quality of the flowers, preparing them for sale. For the rest of the day, she worked like a machine. She smiled at customers, answered questions, gave advice on flower care. Evening was descending on the city, coloring the walls of their apartment in thick orange tones. Isabel sat at the kitchen table, mechanically stirring long-cooled tea. 3 days had passed since the chance encounter outside the cafe. 3 endless days filled with silence and reticence. Mateo stayed late at work more and more often, sending short messages, and when he got home, he went straight to the shower and closed himself in his office with his laptop. Today he texted again, saying he'd be late. Some important documents needed his attention. His phone vibrated. A message from Carmen. "How are you? Should I come over?" "No," Isabel quickly typed a reply. "I'm going to talk to him today. I can't live in this suspense anymore." "Hang in there. Call me anytime." Isabel put the phone down on the table and walked determinedly toward the closet where their savings used to be kept. The empty tin box still stood there, as if mocking their shattered dreams. She pulled it out, set it on the coffee table in the living room right in the center so Mateo would see it as soon as he walked in. The clock on the wall counted down the minutes measuredly. 9 p.m. 10, 11. Close to midnight, the key finally turned in the lock. Mateo came in, whistling softly to some tune. He smelled of expensive perfume, not the kind Isabel had given him for Christmas. "Honey, are you still awake?" He stopped in the living room doorway, noticing his wife. "I told you I was going to be late." "Yes, you've been running late a lot lately," Isabel pointed to a box on the table. "I think we need to talk." Mateo froze, his face losing its carefree expression for a moment. "About what?" "About the money you took without my knowledge. About the restaurant of a certain Rosario where you put it. About why you're meeting her in a cafe when you say you're at work." A heavy silence hung. Mateo sank slowly into his chair, his shoulders slumped. "Were you following me?" he asked at last. "No," Isabel grinned. "I just happened to see you at El Paso. A very business meeting, wasn't it?" Mateo ran his hand over his face as if erasing a mask. "I was going to tell you. I really have. I was just waiting for the right time." "The right time?" Isabel's voice trembled with restrained emotion. "When were you going to tell me? When you lost all our money? Or when that woman finally—" "Don't say that," Mateo interrupted her sharply. "Rosario is a talented restaurateur. She has a great business plan. In 6 months, our investment will have tripled." "Our investment?" Isabel stood up, walked to the window. "You didn't even ask my opinion. It was our joint money, Mateo. For 10 years, we've been saving it for a house, for our future. This is our future." He stood up too, started pacing around the room. "You don't understand. The restaurant business is booming right now. We can make a lot more money." "We?" Isabel turned to him. "Or are you and Rosario? I've seen the way you look at her, the way you touch her. Is that part of the business plan too?" Mateo stopped, his face contorted. "You have no right to—" "No. You're the one who had no right." Isabel raised her voice for the first time that evening. "Had no right to dispose of our joint money without my consent. Had no right to lie to me. Had no right to ruin our dreams." She grabbed the empty box from the table, shook it in front of his face. "This was our future, Mateo, our home. Remember how we planned it? A big kitchen, a winter garden, a room for the future child." "Isabel, listen." He tried to take her hand, but she pulled away. "I've thought of everything. The restaurant will bring in a steady income. We'll be able to buy a house much better than the one we dreamed of." "You really think this is about the house?" She looked him in the eye. "It's about trust, Mateo. About respect. About honesty. Where is all that?" He looked away, slumped back in his chair. "I should have consulted you, I know, but I was sure you wouldn't agree. You're always so cautious, always afraid to take risks. And rightly so." Isabel clenched her fists. "Because such ventures ruin lives, destroy families." "Rosario knows what she's doing," Mateo repeated stubbornly. "She already has experience in the restaurant business, and connections. And what's between you two?" Isabel asked quietly. "Just don't lie to me again, please." Mateo was silent for a long time, so long that the silence became physically tangible, pressing on his eardrums. "I didn't mean for this to happen," he finally uttered. "It just happened. She's so lively, energetic. She sees opportunities where others see only obstacles." Each word hit like a slap in the face. Isabel sank slowly onto the couch, feeling her fingers go numb. "And how long ago did this happen?" "3 months ago, at a business meeting. She was looking for investors for her restaurant, and I was looking for a way to increase our savings." "And you found one," Isabel grinned bitterly. "Found a business partnership, a mistress, and a way to spend all our money." "Don't say that." He jumped up again. "This is a serious business project. I'm not going to let you denigrate it." "Mess it up?" Isabel shook her head. "You ruined it yourself, Mateo. Everything we had." She stood up, walked over to the dresser, pulled out a folder of paperwork for their failed house. Pictures, plans, estimates. Everything they'd been dreaming of for the last few months. "Here." She placed the folder in front of him. "You can take it. You don't need this humble house now, do you? You have other plans now. A different future." "Isabel, come on." A pleading note came into his voice. "Let's talk calmly. I'll explain everything. I'll show you the business plan, the calculations." "No," she shook her head. "I don't want to hear anything about your business plan. I only want to know one thing. Can you give the money back?" Mateo looked away. "They're already invested in renovating the space, in the equipment. I see." Isabel headed for the door. "Then this conversation is over." "Where are you going?" "To Carmen's. I need to think. About us. About the future. About what to do next." She walked out of the apartment, leaving her husband sitting in the chair with a confused expression on his face. The entryway was quiet, with only music playing somewhere upstairs. Isabel walked slowly down the stairs, each step echoing with a resounding thud. Carmen opened the door before Isabel could knock. She must have seen her friend through the bakery window. The room smelled of freshly baked goods. Carmen always started preparing the dough for the next day in the evening. "I was just about to call you." Carmen pulled her friend inside, giving her a worried look. "God, you're totally freezing! And where's your jacket?" Isabel only shook her head, allowing her friend to seat herself at a small table in the back of the bakery. Carmen quickly poured tea, added honey, and slid a plate of still warm scones over to her. "Did you talk to him?" she asked, taking a seat next to her. Isabel wrapped her chilled fingers around the cup, feeling the warmth slowly return to her body. "Yes, he admitted everything, about the money and about her." "About Rosario?" Carmen said the name with obvious disdain. "Yes, he says he's in love, that she's special, lively, energetic." Isabel grinned unfunnily. "Unlike me, apparently." "Stop it." Carmen squeezed her hand. "Don't you dare belittle yourself. This is all his fault." Isabel took a sip of her tea. The hot liquid burned her tongue, but the sensation was almost pleasant. It reminded her that she could still feel something. "You know what the worst part is?" she uttered after a long pause. "I can't even hate him. We've been together since we were 15. That's half my life, Carmen. How can you just take it all and cross it all out?" Carmen stood up, walked over to the stove where the dough for tomorrow's croissants was simmering in a large pot, stirred it with a wooden spatula, a familiar motion Isabel had seen hundreds of times. "And how could he cross your shared dreams?" Carmen asked without turning around. "How could he take your savings and give them to another woman?" Isabel lowered her head. The scene in the cafe came before her eyes again. Mateo and Rosario, so happy, so free. Without the weight of 10 years of commitment, without shared memories, without dashed hopes. "He says it's a good investment," her voice sounded muffled. "That in 6 months the money will be tripled." And you believe it? Carmen walked back to the table, sitting down across from her friend. After all the lies, after all his excuses, do you really believe he's thinking about your money? Isabel shook her head. No. But what can I do? The money is already invested in repairs, in equipment. Wait, Carmen straightened up. You mean he's already started the renovations? Without paperwork? Without making it official? I don't know, Isabel frowned. He said he and Rosario are going to the notary tomorrow to sign some papers. Okay. Carmen stood up resolutely. We need a lawyer. I have an acquaintance who does commercial real estate. I'll call him right now. She pulled out her cell phone, stepped back to the window. Isabel heard bits and pieces of the conversation, something about an urgent consultation, about paperwork, about joint property rights. Carmen's voice sounded confident and businesslike. Okay, tomorrow at 9, she said, returning to the desk. He'll see us before the office opens. Carmen, Isabel shook her head. I'm not sure. I'm sure, her friend interrupted. Look, that money belongs to both of you. Mateo had no right to have sole control of it, much less invest it in his mistress's dubious business. The last word hurt her ears. Mistress. What an ugly, dirty word. Isabel never thought it would become a part of her life. I don't know where to begin, she admitted. Everything seems so confusing. Let's start with the main thing. Carmen pulled out a notepad and pen. We need to know the exact amount he took. Then, all the documents he signed with this Rosario and the address of the restaurant. She methodically wrote down the items, and this businesslike manner was strangely soothing to Isabel. Turned a personal tragedy into a task to be solved. The amount is 2,400,000 souls, Isabel began to list. I haven't seen the documents, but I know they're going to sign something tomorrow at the notary. And the restaurant, she stammered. I don't even know where it's located. We'll find out, Carmen said confidently. There aren't many restaurants in our neighborhood that are being renovated right now. I'll ask around my suppliers. They're always on the lookout for such news. Outside the window, it was beginning to lighten. Isabel realized with surprise that they had talked all night. Soon the first employees of the bakery would start arriving. The store would have to be opened. Don't worry about the store, Carmen said, as if reading her mind. I'll call my niece. She'll help, and you'll stay at my place. You need to rest before your meeting with the lawyer. Isabel wanted to object, but realized there really wasn't any strength left. The last 24 hours seemed to have sucked all the energy out of her. Thank you, she said quietly. I don't know what I'd do without you. Carmen hugged her friend. You would have made it. You're stronger than you think you are. Now let's go upstairs. I have a spare room and a clean towel. The small guest room smelled of lavender. Carmen always put sachets of dried flowers in the linen cupboards. Isabel sat on the edge of the bed, ran her hand over the fresh linens. Here, Carmen placed a stack of clothes next to it. These might come in handy. And don't you dare refuse. You need to change before your meeting with the lawyer. Isabel nodded, feeling tears come to her eyes, not from grief, but from gratitude. Carmen crouched beside her, putting her arm around her shoulders. Left alone, Isabel slowly changed into the clothes her friend had brought. The simple blouse and pants fit almost perfectly. She and Carmen had always been similar in build. The meeting with the lawyer was shorter than Isabel had expected. A gray-haired man in an austere suit listened carefully to her story, asked a few clarifying questions, and came to an unequivocal verdict. Without her consent, her husband had no right to dispose of their joint savings. But in order to act, he needed proof, documents confirming the investment in Rosario's restaurant. Now Isabel sat in Carmen's car, parked 2 blocks from the notary's office. It was early 11 o'clock on the clock, the time Mateo had named in one of his messages. She didn't answer him, but read every word carefully. Shall I come with you? Carmen looked worriedly at her friend. I don't like all this. Isabel shook her head. No, I have to go by myself. Just wait here, okay? She got out of the car, adjusting her blouse, the same one Carmen had borrowed. The morning sun was already starting to set, but Isabel felt a chill run down her spine. For the first time in her life, she was going to follow someone she had once trusted implicitly. The notary's office was located in an old building with columns. Isabel took a position in the small cafe across the street, ordered a coffee, and waited. The waiter brought her a cup of espresso, and she mechanically stirred the drink without touching it. At precisely 11 o'clock, a familiar cab pulled up in front of the building. Mateo got out of it, wearing the austere suit he usually wore to important meetings. A few minutes later, Rosario appeared, wearing an elegant white dress and high heels. They exchanged quick kisses on the cheeks, like business partners, and disappeared into the building. She forced herself to count to 300 as the lawyer had advised. She needed to give them time to enter the notary's office to start the paperwork. Then she slowly stood up and headed toward the building. It was cool and quiet inside. Isabel studied the list of offices on the first floor. Notary Ramirez, third office on the right. She walked up the wide marble staircase, trying to tread as quietly as possible. The office door was ajar and muffled voices came from there. Isabel approached cautiously, trying to stay in the shadows of the tall filing cabinets that littered the hallway. So, the investment agreement for 2,400,000 souls, the notary's official voice reached her. Mr. Montoya, do you confirm that you are acting on your own behalf? Yes, Mateo's voice sounded confident. I have sole control of these funds. Isabel felt her insides tighten. Solely? After 15 years of marriage, after all their shared plans and decisions. Fine, the notary spoke again. Now for the shares in the business. According to the contract, you get 30% of the profits of the restaurant. Not just of the profits, dear. It was Rosario's voice, soft and sort of purring. You get a share in the whole business. We're partners now, in every sense. Isabel covered her mouth with her hand so as not to give herself away. In every way. So this wasn't just a business arrangement. They're really planning a future together, using the money she'd helped save up all these years. Yes, of course. Mateo's voice had taken on those special intonations that used to be reserved for her. I trust you completely, sweetheart. Sweetheart. The word hit like a slap in the face. How many times had he called her that, Isabel? And now, please sign here and here. The notary's businesslike tone interrupted her thoughts. The contract is in 3 copies. One stays with me. You get the others. Isabel heard the rustling of papers, the click of a fountain pen. Now they would sign the papers and the money would officially go to Rosario. Their shared money, their dreams of a house, their future all turned into 30% of some restaurant. Congratulations on a successful transaction. The notary's voice sounded dry and official. I wish you success in your business. Isabel retreated into the shadows as the office door opened. Mateo and Rosario stepped out, holding hands. They looked like a couple celebrating an important event in their lives. In Rosario's hands was a folder of documents, proof of their betrayal, captured on paper and stamped. We need to celebrate this, Isabel heard Rosario's voice. Why don't we go to my place? We'll open a bottle of wine, discuss future plans. I'd love to, Mateo replied. I'll just write a message so they won't be expecting me at work. They walked past, not noticing Isabel in the semi-darkness of the hallway. Her ex-husband, she could definitely think of him that way now, pulled out his cell phone, dialing another message with a lie about an emergency at work. Isabel waited until their footsteps were hushed on the stairs and quickly made her way downstairs. Carmen was waiting for her in the car, tapping her fingers nervously on the steering wheel. Well? She asked when Isabel sat down next to her. Any luck finding out anything? More than enough, Isabel's voice sounded strangely calm. "They've signed a contract. Mateo becomes part owner of the restaurant, 30% in exchange for our money." "Scumbag," Carmen exhaled. "And that new partner, do they think they're going to get away with it?" Isabel shook her head. "No. We have everything we need now. The papers are signed. The deal is finalized. Mateo has officially confirmed that he has sole control of the money." "Great," Carmen started the car. "So we're going to see a lawyer?" "No." Isabel fastened her seatbelt. "Let's follow them first. I want to know where that restaurant is." Carmen threw her friend a surprised look. "Are you sure? Wouldn't it be better to start official action right away?" "Sure." Isabel pointed to a silver car pulling out of the parking lot. "There they are. Keep your distance, but don't lose sight of them." They followed Rosario's car across town. Finally, the silver car stopped outside a 3-story building with wide storefronts. The facade showed signs of renovation, and workers were scurrying around inside. "There it is," Isabel whispered. "The place where all our savings went." Mateo and Rosario stepped out of the car, holding hands again. They looked like a normal couple in love, looking around their future property. Isabel watched them go inside, Rosario enthusiastically showing something to Mateo as he put his arm around her waist. "That's enough," Carmen said firmly. "You've seen everything you need to see. Now it's time to act." Isabel nodded, pulling out her cell phone. "Yes, you're right. Please call your lawyer. Tell him we're on our way to see him, and that we have the address of the restaurant and a time to sign the papers at the notary." While Carmen was on the phone, Isabel took another look at the restaurant building. This was where her dream of owning her own home was going to be realized. 10 years of hopes and plans had dissolved here, but now she knew what to do. She had proof, an address, witnesses. It was time to start fighting for justice. 2 days passed after the meeting with the lawyer. Isabel mechanically performed the usual work in the store, made bouquets, communicated with customers. Outwardly, everything looked as usual, but inside she felt a strange numbness, as if she were watching her life from the outside. Mateo kept sending messages and calling, but she didn't answer. She spent the night at Carmen's, not ready to return to their shared apartment, where everything reminded her of the years they'd lived together. Her friend didn't ask questions, just left fresh coffee and croissants in the morning. That day, Isabel closed the store earlier than usual. The lawyer advised her to gather as much evidence as possible, so she decided to follow Mateo again. He texted again to say he'd be late for work, but his car was parked outside Rosario's restaurant a long time ago. The restaurant building had been transformed over the days. The facade had been painted a warm peach color, and new windows had been installed. Workers were finishing installing the sign La Rosa Dorada, the Golden Rose. Isabel grinned bitterly. Even the name was pretentious, like Rosario herself. It was evening. The workers were leaving the building one by one. Isabel stood in the shadow of a neighboring building, watching the lights come on in the windows of the second floor. It must have been the owner's apartment, a luxurious suite, furnished with the money she and Mateo had saved for their modest home. Another half-hour passed. It was finally dark, and the streetlights were on. Isabel was about to leave when the front door of the restaurant opened. Rosario came out first, holding some folders. Mateo followed her, unaccustomedly relaxed, his shirt collar unbuttoned. "Shall we go up to my place?" Rosario's voice sounded soft, seductive. "We'll discuss menu plans in a more comfortable setting." Mateo looked around, an old habit Isabel knew so well. Then he nodded and they entered the building together. After a minute, the windows on the second floor became brighter. The main lights had been turned on. Isabel walked slowly to the front door. It was unlocked. Apparently Rosario hadn't expected visitors at this hour. The hallway smelled of fresh paint and construction dust. A wide staircase led up to the second floor, where muffled voices and laughter could be heard. The door to the apartment was ajar. Music came from deep inside, something jazzy, sensual. Isabel cautiously peeked inside. The spacious living room was furnished with expensive furniture, with fancy abstract paintings hanging on the walls. An open bottle of wine and 2 glasses stood on the coffee table. Voices echoed from the bedroom. Isabel moved slowly toward the sound, feeling each step echo with pain throughout her body. She knew what she would see, but she had to see for herself, had to see the ultimate proof of betrayal. The bedroom door was open. In the soft light of the bedside lamps, Isabel saw them, Mateo and Rosario, merged in a passionate kiss. His shirt was already on the floor. Her dress was unbuttoned. They didn't notice anything around them, completely absorbed in each other. "That's how it is." Isabel's voice sounded unexpectedly loud in the semi-darkness of the room. Mateo recoiled from Rosario, his face contorted with horror. "Isabel, what am I doing here?" She took a step forward, feeling strangely calm. "I thought I'd check to see where our money went. I see now. It went to fixing up the love nest." Rosario hurriedly buttoned her dress, her perfect hair disheveled. "Look, it's not what you think." "No, it is exactly what I think." Isabel shifted her gaze to her husband's mistress. "You got both the money and the man. Congratulations. I hope it was worth it." Mateo took a step toward her, trying to explain something. "Sweetheart, let's talk." "Don't you dare call me sweetheart." Her voice was ringing with restrained emotion. "You lost that right when you decided to invest our life savings in this farce, when you betrayed all our dreams." "It's not a farce," Rosario intervened. "We have a serious business plan. The restaurant will make a good profit." Isabel laughed, a dry, mirthless laugh. "A serious business plan? One that involves seducing a married man and embezzling other people's money? That's a great plan, I'll give you that." "I love her," Mateo suddenly blurted out. "It came out of the blue, but I do love Rosario." Those words hit harder than all the previous betrayals. Isabel staggered back, resting her hand on the door jamb. "Love? What about the 15 years of our lives? What about all our plans, our dreams, our promises?" "I'm sorry," he lowered his eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you." "Didn't mean to hurt you?" She shook her head. "Then why steal our mutual money? Why lie? Why turn me into a laughingstock?" Rosario tried to interject. "Look, let's discuss this calmly. I understand your feelings." "You don't understand anything," Isabel cut her off. "You have no idea what it's like to find out that the man you've lived half your life with stole your joint savings and gave it to his mistress." She turned to Mateo. "Enjoy your new restaurant and your new life, but don't think you can get away with it." "What do you mean?" There was a note of concern in his voice. "You'll find out." Isabel headed for the exit. "And very soon." She walked down the stairs, feeling her knees shake. There were worried voices behind her. Mateo and Rosario were arguing about something, but she couldn't make out the words. It didn't matter. It was chilly outside. Isabel walked slowly down the sidewalk, not noticing the passers-by. Mateo's words, "I love her," echoed in her head. Such simple words that undid all the years of their life together. The phone in her bag vibrated. Carmen. Isabel didn't answer it right away, wiping her cheeks wet with tears first. "Where are you?" Her friend's voice sounded worried. "It's late. I'm worried." "I saw them," Isabel said quietly. "In the apartment above the restaurant. They were, together." "Oh, honey," Carmen was quiet. "Do you want me to come over?" "No." Isabel stopped a passing cab. "I'm coming to your place, and we're going to the police tomorrow." "The police?" Carmen sounded surprised. "Are you sure?" "Absolutely." Isabel gave the cab driver the address. "Enough tears and misery. It's time to act." She leaned back in the seat of the cab, looking out the lights of the city passing outside the window. There was an emptiness inside, but not the paralyzing emptiness of despair that had haunted her for the past few days. It was a cleansing emptiness from which determination was born. Matteo had betrayed their love, their trust, their dreams. But he couldn't just take their shared money away. That money wasn't just savings. It was years of work, hopes, plans. And Isabel was going to get it back, no matter what it took. Isabel sat at the desk in her flower store, methodically going through the paperwork. The bell above the door jingled. It was Carmen with 2 glasses of coffee and a bag of fresh pastries. "You haven't had breakfast," she said affirmatively, placing the glass and croissant in front of her friend. "And don't even try to refuse." Isabel nodded gratefully, taking a sip of the hot beverage. The coffee was strong, cinnamon, just the way she liked it. "Mateo's been calling all morning," she pronounced, setting the phone aside. "I'm not answering." "You're doing the right thing." Carmen took a seat next to her. "What are you planning now?" Giving him one last chance, Isabel pointed to the neatly laid out documents. "If he doesn't return the money voluntarily, I'll go to the police." At that moment, the door of the store opened again. Matteo stood on the threshold, wrinkled with circles under his eyes, wearing the same shirt as yesterday. "Isabel, we need to talk," he said, taking a step forward. Carmen stood up, blocking her friend. "I don't think you have anything to discuss anymore." "This is our business," Matteo replied sharply. "Family business." "Family?" Isabel rose from the table. "After what I saw yesterday, you're still talking about family." Matteo ran his hand over his face as if wiping away the fatigue. "Look, I can explain everything." "There's no need," Isabel interrupted him. "I have seen enough, and now I'm only interested in one question. When will you return our money?" "What money?" He grinned nervously. "The one invested in the restaurant." "But it's an investment," I explained. "An investment?" Isabel picked up a file folder from the table. "You call it an investment that you stole our joint savings and gave it to your mistress." "Don't say that about Rosario," Matteo burst out. "Ona is a talented restaurateur. She has a great flair for business." "And married men with money," Isabel added dryly. "But this isn't about her right now. I want to know, will you return the money voluntarily, or should I go to the police?" Matteo froze, his face pale. "To the police? Are you crazy? It's our joint money." "Exactly." Isabel opened the folder. "Shared, which you handled single-handedly without my consent. I have all the documents that prove our savings. There are witnesses to you signing the contract at the notary's office, claiming to be acting on your own behalf." "You followed me?" His voice trembled. "And you lied to me," she parried. "For months, so it's not for you to talk about morality." Carmen watched the scene in silence, ready to intervene at any moment. But Isabel held herself remarkably calm. Only the fingers clutching the folder trembled slightly. "I can't return the money," Matteo finally pronounced. "They've already invested in repairs, in equipment, contracts signed, orders placed." "So the police," Isabel slammed the folder shut. "MTO see if you had the right to handle our collective savings." "You won't do that," he stepped closer. "Think of my reputation, my job. Have you thought about our family, about our plans, about the house we dreamed of?" "The house?" Matteo grinned bitterly. "Are you still thinking about that little house? The restaurant will bring us so much more. In a year we can buy a villa if you want." "Us?" Isabel shook her head. "There is no us anymore, Matteo. There is only you and your Rosario, and your restaurant built with stolen money." "Not stolen," he raised his voice. "It was our common." "Exactly," Isabel interrupted him. "Shared. That's why I'm giving you 24 hours. Either you return the money or I'm going to the police." "You're bluffing." Matteo tried to smile, but the smile came out crooked. You're not going to the police. You're not going to raise a scandal. Really? Isabel stepped up close to him. Do you think I have anything to lose? You've already taken everything. Our money, our dreams, our future. What else do I have to lose? There was a heavy silence in the store. Only the fan hummed softly, creating a slight movement of air that made the flower petals in the window sway. Isabel, Mateo lowered his voice, trying to speak softer. Let's settle this amicably. I can get you a share in the restaurant. I don't want a share in your restaurant. She took a step back. I want my money. All 2,400,000 souls of it. That's impossible. He splashed his hands. Do you realize that all the contracts have already been signed, that repairs are underway, that equipment has been ordered? Those are your problems, Isabel replied coldly. You have 24 hours. Then I'm going to the police. You wouldn't dare. A threatening note appeared in his voice. Think of the consequences, about the scandal, about what people will say. I don't care what people say. Isabel returned to the table, beginning to gather her papers. I only care about my money, which you stole. Mateo stood in the middle of the store, clenching and unclenching his fists. His gaze darted between Isabel and Carmen, as if looking for support or understanding. Is that your last word? He asked finally. Yes. Isabel didn't lift her head, continuing to put the papers in the folder. 24 hours. Time's running out. You're going to regret this, he muttered through gritted teeth. I swear you'll regret it. Is that a threat? Carmen interjected. Maybe I should record this conversation. Mateo threw her an angry look and headed for the exit. At the door, he stopped. Think again, Isabel. Don't do anything stupid. The only stupid thing I've already done, she replied, finally looking up. When I believed you were capable of loyalty and honesty. The door slammed shut behind him with such force that the bell jingled pitifully. Isabel sank slowly into a chair, feeling her knees shake. You did good. Carmen put her arm around her friend's shoulders. You held up just fine. He won't give the money back, Isabel said quietly. I could see it in his eyes. So we're going to the police tomorrow, Carmen said firmly. You have all the paperwork. You have witnesses. They'll make him give the money back. Isabel nodded, running her hand over the file folder. Inside weren't just papers. There was the story of her and Mateo's life. Receipts for their first installments when they were just starting to save up. Account statements showing how the amount grew year after year. The calculations and plans they'd made together, dreaming of a house of their own. You know, she said after a long silence, I'm even glad he said no. Now I know for sure I'm doing the right thing. The police station greeted Isabel with the coolness of the air-conditioned air and the smell of coffee. The reception area wasn't crowded, just a few people filling out paperwork at the front desk. Carmen squeezed her friend's hand tightly as they waited their turn. 24 hours had expired. Mateo hadn't returned the money, only sent a long message of accusations and threats. Isabel deleted it before she finished. There was a file folder in her bag now, all the evidence of his crime collected over the days. Next, came the voice of the duty officer. Isabel walked over to the counter, pulling out the documents. Hello, I'd like to file a theft report. The policeman, an older man with a neat gray mustache, looked up at her carefully. What was stolen? Money. 2,400,000 souls, Isabel spoke calmly, as if it were someone else's story. My husband took our joint savings without my consent and invested it in his mistress's business. The officer stopped typing, looked at her carefully. This is a serious accusation, Senora. Do you have proof? Yes. Isabel opened the folder. Here are all the documents proving our joint savings over 10 years. Account statements, receipts, calculations, and the contract my husband signed at the notary's office investing that money in the restaurant business. She methodically laid the papers out on the counter, her voice growing firmer with each document. The policeman scrutinized each page, making notes in his notebook. "Sergeant Rojas," he introduced himself at last. "I'll be handling your case. Let's go to my office. I'll need to write up a detailed statement." The sergeant's office was in the back of the building, a small room with blinds on the windows and an old fan under the ceiling. Pictures of police academy graduates from different years hung on the walls. Rojas pointed Isabel to a chair, sat down at the computer himself. "Tell me everything in order," he asked, opening a new file. "When did you discover the money was missing?" Isabel began to tell, about how she and Mateo had been saving for a house, how she discovered a strange message on his cell phone, how she found the empty money box, how she followed him to the notary's office and the restaurant. Sergeant Rojas typed methodically, occasionally asking clarifying questions. His face remained impassive, but an understanding expression appeared in his eyes when Isabel recounted particularly painful moments. "So your husband claimed at the signing of the contract that he had sole control of these funds?" he clarified, looking over the documents. "Yes." Isabel pulled out the notary's office address written down. "This happened 3 days ago. Notary Ramirez can confirm." "And the owner of the restaurant?" Rojas checked the records. "One Rosario Valdez. Did she know that the money belonged to both of you?" "Of course she knew," Carmen interjected. "She and Mateo have been lovers for months. It was a planned deception." The sergeant made another notation in his notebook. "We'll need statements from the notary and possibly other witnesses. Is there anyone else who can corroborate your story?" "My lawyer." Isabel held out a business card. "He's been advising me on this case. And the restaurant employees who saw Mateo coming there, even though he said he was at work." "Do you realize that this statement could have serious consequences for your husband?" the sergeant asked, looking Isabel in the eye. "A criminal case, perhaps even imprisonment?" "I see." She held his gaze. "I gave him a chance to return the money voluntarily. He refused." Rojas leaned back in his chair, tapping his pen on the desk. "Good. We'll start the investigation. First, we'll interview the notary, then we'll check all the financial documents. You'll need to sign an official statement." He pulled several sheets from the printer, handed them to Isabel. She read each line slowly, realizing that these papers would change not only her life, but Mateo's as well. Perhaps she should feel regret or guilt, but inside there was only weariness and a desire for justice. "Sign here and here," Rojas pointed to the appropriate places, "and leave a contact number. We'll get back to you when we get into action." Isabel signed, clear, confident. So many times she'd signed documents with Mateo, apartment contracts, insurance policies, bank papers. But this signature was special. It marked the end of their relationship. "How fast will the results be?" Carmen asked as Isabel filled out the last of the forms. "With this kind of evidence, pretty quickly," Rojas replied. "Especially if the notary confirms what you say. We'll be able to seize the restaurant's accounts and freeze all transactions until the circumstances are clarified." The early morning street where the Golden Rose restaurant was located was unusually busy. Police cars took up almost the entire parking lot. Sergeant Rojas acted quickly and efficiently. The court ordered that all funds invested in the restaurant be frozen until the circumstances were clarified. "You need to be present for the property inventory," Rojas said by phone. "As the injured party, you need to verify the amount invested." A small crowd had gathered outside the restaurant. Employees, vendors, casual gawkers. Rosario stood at the door, nervously clutching a designer purse in her hands. Her usually flawless makeup was smudged and her fashionable hair was disheveled. "You can't do this!" she shouted to the policeman blocking the entrance. "We have contracts, commitments. There's supposed to be an opening in a week." Isabel slowly approached the entrance. Rosario spotted her. Her husband's mistress's eyes widened with rage. You're the one who ruined everything. We could have had an amicable arrangement. Amicably? Isabel stopped in front of her. How can you negotiate with people who stole my money and ruined my family? No one stole anything. Rosario raised her voice. Mateo decided to invest in a promising business on his own. Mateo had no right to solely manage our joint savings, Isabel replied calmly. And you both knew that very well. Sergeant Rojas came out of the restaurant with a folder of documents. Señora Montoya, come in. We need to check the financial records. Inside the restaurant, chaos reigned. Newly installed tables had been pushed against the walls to make room for police work. Folders of paperwork were piled on the bar. Here are the estimates for renovations and equipment. Rojas spread the papers out on the nearest table. We need to reconcile all the expenses with the amount your husband took. Isabel leaned over the documents. Numbers danced before her eyes. Hundreds of thousands of soles for decorating, for furniture, for appliances. And here comes the master of ceremonies himself, Rojas murmured. Mateo appeared in the doorway. When he saw Isabel, he froze on the threshold. Why are you here? At the request of the police. She didn't look up from her papers. I have to confirm the amount of money stolen. I didn't steal. His voice trailed off. It was our joint money. I meant well. For the best? Isabel finally looked at him. Better for whom, Mateo? For me or for your mistress? Rosario, who was standing at the bar, flinched. Don't you dare call me… What should I call you? Isabel interrupted her. Business partner? An investor? Or someone who helped her husband steal the family savings? That's enough, Rojas interjected. Several more police officers entered the room with equipment to inventory the property. They began methodically photographing every item, every element of the interior. Rosario paced nervously between them, trying to explain and argue something. All funds will be frozen until the court decides, Rojas explained. The restaurant won't be able to open anytime soon. But it will bankrupt us, Rosario exclaimed. I have contracts with suppliers, prepayments, obligations. You should have thought of that before, replied the sergeant dryly, when you accepted money which your partner was not authorized to handle alone. Isabel finished going through the paperwork. It all added up. Their family savings were fully invested in this restaurant. Every soul she and Mateo had set aside over the years had turned into furniture, appliances, finishes. I confirmed the amount, she said to Rojas. 2,400,000 souls. It's all here. Excellent, the sergeant made a notation in the protocol. Now the court will determine the order of repayment. Refunds? Mateo stepped forward. But the money's already invested. Are you going to make us sell it all? That's exactly what will happen, Rojas nodded. The entire property will be sold to compensate the rightful owner of the funds. Rosario sank into the nearest chair, covering her face with her hands. This is the end. My entire project. All plans. Is this what you wanted? Mateo turned to Isabel. You wanted to ruin everything. No, Mateo, she shook her head. It was you who ruined everything. When you decided you could handle our shared money without my consent, when you betrayed our trust, when you chose her over our family. Señora Montoya, Rojas addressed her, we are finished. You are free to go. We'll contact you when the court decides on the order of restitution. Isabel nodded, gathering her papers. At the exit, she paused, casting one last glance at the restaurant. Stylish interior, expensive furnishings, state-of-the-art equipment, all the things their family savings had gone into. Their dreams of their own home had turned into someone else's business project, which was now crumbling before their eyes. Isabel got into her car, casting one last glance at the Golden Rose sign. It would be taken down in a few hours. The restaurant would never open. There would be no grand opening, no successful business built on stolen money.